Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Clutter. I'm your host, Margo, a professional decluttering coach specializing in at-home wellness. And today we're going to chat about what clutter is and what clutter isn't, and most importantly, and how this episode is going to benefit you. We're going to talk about why we're stuck decluttering. Every single one of us knows that we have to purge, that we have to get rid of all of that toxic clutter that's having all of this negative impact on our daily lives. Yet, a lot of times we are struggling to part with it. So I'm going to go through the most common reasons we have so much clutter. I'm going to identify what that is, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do to get unstuck and finally purge your home and achieve that beautiful, tidy, clean, organized home that I know you can and you absolutely deserve. So first, let's define what is clutter. So clutter, simply stated, the official definition is that clutter is the accumulation of unnecessary or unused items, objects, or possessions that create a messy and disorganized living space. Put in Margo's words, clutter is essentially anything that makes you feel overwhelmed in your space, that you have absolutely no use for, and that does not make you happy. I am not the type of decluttering coach where it's like you only need to keep what you use. I personally have things that I don't necessarily use in my house, but they make me happy. They make me smile, and I love having them around. So for example, I'm a huge fan of throw pillows and throw blankets on my couch. Do we use all of it? No, we don't, but it looks nice and it provides a very homey feel. So if you've listened to any of my podcast episodes or if you've watched my YouTube videos, you know, and I cannot say this enough, clutter is completely subjective, okay? Just because your homegirl or your next door neighbor or your mother or whatnot is a minimalist does not mean that you have to be a minimalist too. However, if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, maybe your chronic health, your mental health is getting worse because you are literally surrounded by tons and tons of things and you just can't breathe in your space, that means that you have a clutter problem, right? But you can 100%, and I don't know, maybe somebody's going to disagree and be like, Margo, what is wrong with you? But you can be a maximalist and still be clutter-free, right? And that's the beauty of achieving a clutter-free environment, is that a clutter-free home is completely subjective, okay? It has to fit you and your personality. And everyone else who thinks that you have too much clutter, but yet you feel absolutely incredible in your space, well, that is just their opinion, and don't even listen to it, okay? The whole point is you should feel at peace, you should be happy, and you should be proud of your space. And if for whatever reason, right now you're just not feeling that way, then, well, we need to declutter, which is why I'm going to talk about the most common reasons I encounter when I'm working with my clients that we have a hard time letting go. We have a hard time parting with our clutter and what you can do about it. Let's begin with the first one, which is probably one of the most common, and it is the emotional attachment. So this would be the sentimentalist personality type. So if this is you, you are struggling to let go of items because of sentimental value, because of nostalgic association, or emotional ties. When you look around your home, you cannot bear parting with many of the items in your space. Now, there is nothing wrong with being a I can't even pronounce the word. There is nothing wrong with being a sentimentalist. However, it becomes a problem when we essentially attach this value to too many things in your home. And I encounter this a lot, so that when you look around your space and you want to declutter and you're looking at the shelves or your kitchen countertop or your coffee table or your makeup products or your beauty products, essentially anywhere you go in your home, you're like, I can't bear to part with this. I can't do it. And it's a real problem. I can completely understand why you're struggling, why it can seem like such an overwhelming task. It's like letting go of an item is like letting go of a piece of you. And that is hard. So anybody that's just telling you like, oh, well, what's the big deal? Just sit down for 15 minutes and get rid of the stuff. It's not easy. So one thing you need to know is that decluttering is a muscle that we build. So what ends up happening is that when we begin to declutter, and I'm going to guide you exactly how to overcome this emotional attachment to too many things and how to kind of get started. But the hardest part when it comes to decluttering and achieving that clean and tidy home with all of its benefits is to start. So my clients, when they come to me and we have our first Zoom one-on-one session and I identify that they just have this overwhelming emotional attachment to items, the key here is to get started. And you're probably like, Margo, well, yeah, duh. I mean, easier said than done. So because decluttering is a muscle, for you, the best thing to do would be to start with items that are like clear tosses. So let me explain what I mean by that. So typically, I direct my clients to begin with either their pantry or other items around the house that have an expiration date. Now, why are we doing that? Well, because if the item is expired, if it's a food item or a can or, a bag of something, if it's expired, well, then it's an easy toss, right? It's an easy decision. If you have expired sunblocks or you have expired lotion or you have expired makeup or whatever it is, the most important thing is when you have emotional attachments, when, there's kind of like the sentimental value attached to everything and these are your prized babies and your prized possessions, what we need to do is we want to get you started. And the best way to do that is to begin by decluttering your pantry and focusing on items that are easy to toss. And this is why I love starting with expired things because it's very black and white. If it's expired, then you let it go. If it's not, then it's a keeper. I mean, I can also say if you're not going to eat it, let it go too. But with that said, the purpose of this is not like, okay, well, it's just the pantry. The purpose of this is that by the act of decluttering, you begin to build your decluttering muscle. And once you start decluttering, the momentum starts to flow. And I cannot tell you, I've had dozens of women with me with my one-on-one coaching, and they will be like, Margo, I can't part with anything. And in my head, I'm like, no. That's not true. And we will begin with expired items or sometimes, broken things and things of that. And once they start and they see the progress, once you start and you see the progress and how easy it is to let go, you're going to be motivated. You're going to be more confident to tackle other items in your home. So if you have 15 mugs and right now you're like, I cannot part with any of these 15 mugs, I promise you, when you begin to build your decluttering muscle, eventually you might not part with like 10 out of the 15, but you will at least be able to let go of 1 or 2 or 3. And this is what we want. We want to start somewhere that is easy. I want you to feel the benefits, right? How amazing, how delicious it is when you open up your pantry and there's like less stuff. And because of that satisfaction, that becomes your positive reinforcement. Because of that, you're going to have the self-confidence to move on to other items in your home. Now, by the way, I'm not saying you're going to go from the pantry to like, your little one's baby clothing that has a lot of sentimental value, or maybe your, yearbooks from high school, or maybe your first boyfriend's jacket. No. Those are like true sentimental items and we save those for last. But I promise you that if you just start with the easy expired items first and you see the results, you're then just going to go little by little. You can go one random item, a picture frame, a lotion that you've never used, one item at a time. And eventually, even cleaning products. And eventually you will work yourself up to being able to part with all of these other items. So the key here is just begin. And the hardest part is starting. And after that, it just becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. The next one, and also super common, is the just in case mindset. So maybe you're someone who fears that if you let go of an item, you might need it in the future. So there's a certain level of uncertainty. There's this unpredictable nature of a possible emergency that might come, and we're really overestimating the possibility of the likelihood that this emergency will happen. Sometimes we also hold on to things for just in case out of guilt and obligation. So getting rid of gifts or family heirlooms. So we've created stories in our minds that like, oh my God, my girlfriend gave me a tea kettle like 3 years ago for Christmas and I've never used it. But what if I let it go and then she's going to come over and she's going to want to see that tea kettle? Listen. She's not going to ask to see that tea kettle. She might not even remember she gave you a tea kettle, right? But nobody's going to go probing and poking in your cabinets, right? So serve her a cup of coffee. My point is that this is an unrealistic and an unnecessary worry because most people are not going to request to see the item that they gifted you. So if you have items and they're suffocating you and they're taking up space in your cabinets and your drawers and you don't need them, you don't use them, they don't make you happy, let them go. So here is how you combat the just in case mindset. You want to really, when you're evaluating whether or not to let go of an item, you want to really think about like, what is the likelihood of you needing that blender that you've probably had for the last 10 years and never used, right? Like ask yourself the question, if I haven't used it in over a year, what are the chances that I might use it again? And if let's say I do need it in the future, can I possibly use something else? Or worst case scenario, purchase it again. Now here's the thing. Some of you are probably like, what do you mean? But I already have it. Why do I need to purchase it? The truth is, for every 100 items that you let go of, you will probably only miss 2 or 3. And even with those 2 or 3, you will come up with something else to use instead of it or decide, you know what? I don't need it anyways. This has happened to me and my clients again and again and again. And look, I declutter all the time because decluttering, first you do a massive declutter, but afterwards, if you want to continue to keep a clutter-free, clean and tidy home, it requires maintenance. So it means that you're still constantly, routinely declutter. It's just not on such a grandiose scale. And I'll be the first to admit to you, I recently and I had to go to a birthday party and I thought I had a gift box. So I'm like big smile on my face, I'm packing up to go to the party and I go into my closet. Completely 100% certain that I have that gift box. And guess what? I open up the closet and the gift box is not there. You know why it's not there? Because I had decluttered it months earlier because I was like, when in the world am I ever going to use this gift box? Well, lo and behold, 6 months later, I apparently wanted to use the gift box that I decluttered. So something like that will periodically happen. But with that said, in the grand scheme of like the thousands of items I've decluttered over the years, that the chance of that happening is like incredibly rare. And instead of putting it in that huge gift box that I thought I had, I just put it in a gift bag. So all was right with the world. The other thing that you want to consider if you're really holding on to too many items for just in case is what is it costing you to hold on to all these things? Now, I'm not saying keeping a few items here and there for just in case. I'm talking about the abundance of clutter for just in case purposes. These inanimate objects living in your home for free are stressing you out, are causing you anxiety, are causing you feelings of overwhelm, are stealing your ability to focus better and be productive, and are making your mental health and your physical worse. Is it really worth it to hold on to these items for just in case, considering all of the damage that it's doing to you on a daily basis? Probably not. Another thing that really works with some of my clients who have the just in case mindset is to assign a time frame for the item. So for example, when we encounter an item, so I'll use the blender because this is something that happened to one of my clients recently and it's fresh in my mind. So let's say you have this blender that you haven't used for a very long time, but yet you're like, oh, but maybe one day I'll decide to like make smoothies or whatnot, right? So then we'll assign a time frame and we will say, if you do not use this blender in the next 6 months, or it could be the next year, then you declutter it. So that is also something that might be able to help you. And then another big thing across the board, if just in general you are struggling to let go of items, is that I find that donating items and giving items away to friends and family helps with our ability to let go. When we feel like we're doing a good thing and our items are going to benefit somebody else, it makes parting with the item so much easier. All right, the next reason that we hold on to clutter and what to do about it is because I'm talking to you. If you are a perfectionist, like if I have to do it the right way or I don't do it at all. If you're somebody, I call this sponging, right? If you're somebody who is watching a lot of YouTube videos, reading a lot of book, listening to a lot of podcasts, thank you for listening, by the way. I appreciate every single one of you. But if you are somebody that's sponging, you're getting a lot of information all the time because you want to declutter perfectly. I'm going to blow your mind right now. There is no such thing as perfect decluttering. It does not exist. There are no books available on perfect decluttering because it is not a real thing. Your need for everything to be perfect before, during, and after, you're probably experiencing great anxiety and fear over not getting decluttering right. All it's doing is it's leading to procrastination, it's leading to avoidance, and ultimately it is keeping you in a cluttered home. And fun fact, the longer you wait to declutter, the more clutter you will accrue. I want you to think about that. The more you continue to procrastinate decluttering, the more your home will accrue clutter, the more stuff you will acquire. So when we focus on like everything has to be perfect while we're figuring out a way, which by the way is impossible to find, but while we are figuring out a way to declutter perfectly, to organize perfectly, to maintain perfectly, right? Which doesn't exist. While we're doing all of that, your pile of clutter is actually growing. So we got to nip this in the bud, okay? And you really just have to accept that there is no such thing as decluttering perfectly. There's no such thing as organizing perfectly. The system, there's no one fits all. It just has to work for you. You just have to purge. That's it. Don't worry about the system. Don't worry about making it perfect. Just start getting rid of 1 to 5 items a day. A lot of times what helps, especially if you're somebody who struggles with perfectionism, right, and has a lot of anxiety around that, is you would benefit from having a very clear decluttering plan. And this is really like a roadmap and a guide where you essentially choose a room, you break the room up in smaller, more manageable sections, you assign how often you're going to declutter a week, you set alarms. It's a very organized process so that you can perfect. And I actually have an incredible, amazing masterclass on how to create a decluttering plan. I will leave a link to it in the show notes. And the other thing when it comes to if you're somebody who's, suffers from perfectionism, you would really benefit from celebrating each small achievement. Like you want to be hyped up. When you decluttered, a junk drawer or a kitchen cabinet, you want to celebrate every single win because what that's going to do, that positive reinforcement is going to override the procrastination as a result of your perfectionism. This next one has to do with our childhood environment. There seems to be this myth that us as women, we are like born to know how to clean and cook and all that stuff. And that is just so not true. It is completely not true. Decluttering, cleaning, keeping, or rather maintaining a clean and tidy home, this requires that we build skills. that we develop habits. And if you grew up in a home that was full of clutter, this is the only way you know how. You did not learn the habits and the skills to declutter and clean your home. And you're putting all of this pressure on yourself, right? You're making yourself feel bad and decreasing your confidence and your self-esteem because you're like, I don't understand. Like, why can't I, get rid of all this stuff? And why can't I keep my home clean? And all of these other people make it look easy. I don't understand. It should be so easy. I hear this limiting belief from my clients all the time, and it's not true. If you were not taught early on how to have a clutter-free home, how to be intentional about your shopping habits, how to have a cleaning schedule, how are you expected to know it in your adulthood? Like, it's just not possible. So I want to alleviate some of that stress and the pressure and the negative self-talk, right? Where you're making yourself feel bad because you should know this. Because no, you shouldn't know this. It is a learned skill. And a lot of the one-on-one coaching clients that I work with, a lot of them come in and they have this story and these terrible limiting beliefs about who they should be and what their home should look like. And they feel so bad. And I'm like, that's just not true. Like, let's work together. I'm going to teach you all of these skills and all of these habits. And guess what? Just like you've acquired a ton of skills throughout your life, you can learn this one as well. So overcoming this requires that we learn the skills and habits over time that will maintain a clutter-free space. And if you're interested in really if this is something that you struggle with, right? If you feel like you just don't understand and don't know how to declutter, right? How to keep going, maybe you're somebody who starts and stops, right? The momentum strikes, the motivation strikes, and you declutter some beauty products and then next week you don't want to do it anymore. That's the benefit of having an accountability partner. And that is what I do as a decluttering coach. And if you want to learn more on how I can help you achieve a clean and tidy, and most importantly, maintain that incredible, beautiful home that you can be proud of, you can find out more in the show notes about what it's like to work with me as a decluttering coach one-on-one. The next one is excessive shopping. So excessive shopping is something that contributes to the constant influx of us having clutter in our home. So maybe you're even somebody that periodically declutters, but you feel like no matter how much you declutter, piles of clutter just keep, growing bigger and bigger. And that has a lot to do with our shopping habits. So maybe you're somebody that uses retail therapy as emotional fulfillment. So you're using shopping, right, on Amazon or at the mall, and these days it's so easy to just click and buy and check out. So you're using shopping as a coping mechanisms. And, maybe you're even somebody that might not necessarily need an item, but you walk into Target and they have those $1 to $3 bins or $1 to $5 bins. And you just buy things because they're on sale and they're discounted, not because you need them, right? But because they were just cheaper than regular price. Overcoming this requires that we consider the long-term effects of the purchases. And one of the best ways to do this is to create a shopping list before you go out and actually stick to them. So I have a rule. I always, to this day, and I've been at this for many years, to this day, I will not leave my house if I'm going shopping without a shopping list. And guess what? If it's not on the list, I do not buy it. And if I encounter an item where I'm like, it wasn't on the list, but oh my God, this would just be such a great addition, I still don't buy it. I go home, I wait a day or two. And if I still feel like I need this item, that my home can benefit from this item, then I will go back and I will purchase it. And let me tell you, 9 out of 10 times, I do not need that item. I almost never go back to the store and purchase that item, right? So try making a shopping list. Also, refrain from shopping on days where you might be a little extra impulsive, sometimes during that time of the month, or maybe you're feeling extra anxious or stressed. We tend to, use retail as therapy. You know what I mean? So just put down the Amazon app or Shein or Temu. Don't go into any stores, right? Practice self-discipline. One thing that actually works for some of my clients who have a lot of this kind of impulsive, almost addictive shopping. And we can talk about shopping as an addiction for a very long time. Maybe I'll do another podcast episode about that and how to overcome it. But in general, what sometimes works just as well is if you are, let's say, on Amazon and you want to just look at pretty things, instead of buying them, just add to cart, but don't check out, right? Because sometimes we just enjoy the process of like looking, right? So you add to cart and just don't check out. Or you can just add it to your wish list. But the point is that sometimes kind of looking around, window shopping suffices. You don't actually need the item. And then lastly, I work with a lot of clients who have ADHD. And again, I'm just going to talk about this a little bit. I can do an entire episode on ADHD alone. But typically with ADHD, there's a difficulty with attention, impulsivity, sometimes hyperactivity, depending on what type of ADHD you have. You tend to struggle with planning, prioritizing tasks, sustaining focus, and following through on routines. Some of my clients with ADHD also have impulse buying habits, and this has a lot to do with hyperactivity due to hyperfocus. And the interesting thing about ADHD is there is no one size fits all formula. Right? It's not a box diagnosis in the sense that what works for one person that won't necessarily work for you. It also has to do with like dopamine receptors and if we're processing rewards the same way. So again, there's a lot that goes into ADHD. So if you're somebody who has ADHD and you've listened to a bunch of videos and you've tried certain things and they don't work for you, it does not mean that like all hope is gone. It's just for somebody with ADHD, it's really trial and error, and it's trying different things before we kind of nail a formula that allows us to start and finish a project, which tends to be the most challenging thing. Is number one, to even get started. If you have ADHD, you might find yourself really struggling, right? You're procrastinating to get started. You're like dreading decluttering, right? And then when you do start, what ends up happening is you have a ton of unfinished projects all around your house. And that can create a lot of stress and anxiety. You might be sitting on your couch thinking, oh my God, I know I have to finish, decluttering that box, but I just can't get up and do it. And that in itself creates a lot of negative self-talk. And it's like a cyclical thing that's happening. Just a few things with ADHD. One thing that tends to work is to break projects up into smaller, very small, manageable things. So for example, instead of saying, I'm going to declutter that entire junk drawer, that might be a lot. Say, I'm going to declutter, let's say, 5 items. Instead of decluttering an entire closet, say, I'm going to declutter the drawer of socks, right? It's really focusing on quick and easy wins. The faster, the better. I have a client now where she declutters in 5 to 10 minute increments. And we really have to work hard to get her excited about the decluttering project, because if she's not excited about it, then she's not going to get started. She's going to procrastinate, which is hard to do with me as a coach because I'm like on you. Did you do it? Let me see a before and after, right? So the accountability here is very, very strong. So what tends to work is setting alarms to start and to stop, keeping things very minimal, 5 to 15 minutes tops. I know that with some folks with ADHD, if you're excited about the project, you can really get into it and do it for like 2 hours. Another thing that works if you have ADHD is body doubling. If you have somebody in your house, a partner, a friend, a roommate, a child, and you can just have them sit in the same room with you when you're decluttering, that tends to work very, very well as well. And then also using visual reminders. So for example, if you're decluttering something in the kitchen, put a big to-do list in your kitchen to be reminded that you have to get it done. And of course, if you have ADHD, one of the best ways to truly achieve a clean and tidy home and declutter successfully is to really invest in a accountability partner, or specifically a decluttering coach. All right, so those are some of the main reasons that we have a hard time letting go and kind of what to do about them. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, good luck on your decluttering journey. And remember to be good to yourself.